Well, it's an off week. Midway off this week and then back on the road again. Probably the longest overall amount of road trips they've had, except that one time when they had to play in Midland, Odessa, right after COVID. But back on the road next week against the Kangaroos, Colleen High at Leo Buckley Stadium. But the off week, and you needed it.
We needed it.
Great win against Temple, and
Yes,
we'll
sir.
do that. But your team has had a lot of bumps, bruises, and even worse than that in some occasions. How much did you need the break?
We needed this bye week, and we needed it for a lot of reasons. Even if we were completely healthy right now, you sit there, you go through a 7-game stretch of games that, honestly, you're playing a full 48 in most of them. And that says a lot about our district.
Mm-hmm.
You sit there, you open up with Harker Heights, and then you turn around and play Shoemaker, then you turn around and play Temple and stuff. You need to get to a break like this. And so to have the break in mid district is favorable for us. We also need it right now because of the injury bug. Fortunately, knock on wood, we're pretty good from an offensive standpoint outside of the, minor bumps and bruises that guys have been playing through, and you hope to get them healthy this week. But, defensively, I don't know that this is mathematically possible, but, when you're sitting there saying, hey, 7 of your starting front 6 are out.
I'm pretty good at math. Yeah. 7 of the front 6,
are out. You're a little bit banged up. But I also think that's an opportunity to sit here and recognize our coaches and just, what a phenomenal job that they've done and just putting these young men in a great position to be successful. And then I think it's a big hats off, big kudos to our kids that – gosh, David, we've had to shuffle kids from one position to another position, and it may not be their natural position, but right now this is what makes us the best. And then giving kids, young men, opportunities that have been just chomping at the bit for the opportunity to get on the field and show what I can do, and then even moving young men up from the JV to the varsity and getting out there and they went out last Friday and did a great job. And so I'm extremely proud of how they performed.
Carl Simmons, safety, now was inside interior linebacker, and he just seems like he just went right into it. Of course, playing safety is kind of like just a deeper version of
Sure.
a linebacker. You mentioned from like Jackson Shane, who's in the rotation on the defensive lines, an offensive lineman, but he gives you some bulk, and he's been there. And then a lot of other guys have just,
Jaden Anderson goes to defensive end.
Yeah.
And the list can go on and on.
So I guess my question is, and you may not know since it's midweek, but do you get some of the cavalry back for the game next week?
I think we will, and we're excited for it. As a matter of fact, this morning in our practice, we had a couple of those guys back defensively, a couple linebackers back, Hudson King, Max Mayton. We're back on the field, and I got them running around out there in yellow and pink jerseys so that nobody would touch them. And simply because we want them to get reps, and let's try to get through some of the soreness. A guy like Hudson King, he hadn't played ball since game 1 versus Westwood, and you can go over there and you can do all sorts of training and all sorts of stuff. There's nothing like playing ball, and so he's healthy, but at the same time, we want to prevent soft tissue stuff and things of that nature. We want you to be available, and we always talk about it. The very best ability we have is availability.
Yeah, there's a difference in even if you're doing some cardio outside of the game, but what you do when you're playing, and even though you're practicing, you're not in the game, but you're playing sometimes as you get ready, even in an off week, it's a different cardio too. And they got to get hit again. One of the positions that to me is affected the most when they're out for perhaps even a game or even a practice. I've seen this over the years as a running back who hasn't been hit.
No doubt.
There's some guys you want to protect them, but that hasn't been hit. It's inevitable they'll probably fumble. It's just because it's, getting used to the contact and stuff. So you're 6-1. Temple tried to hit you on the first play, their quarterback play, Champ Mayo. There's no doubt. I don't think there was any doubt he was going to play. He tried to hit you on a deep post. They had been throwing the ball for 300 yards a game with him and also Basinger, the young man who did a good job. They had a receiver in Brown that was averaging 25 yards a catch, but Lane Alexander just read it perfectly, almost lulled him to sleep. It was good coverage deep too. But I don't know if they had 20 yards passing. What were you doing to keep them? Because they were an explosive offense, and I don't know if they'd played anybody like you yet either.
Sure.
Although they had played Shoemaker.
Sure.
What were you doing? I mean, that was dominant, Joe.
Well,
dominant.
Again, just, our kids and them just going and carrying out, the game plan, and then studying their opponent and knowing not just what is their makeup and what are their dynamics and, what's their lifeline and things of that nature, but, studying each kid and what they do and knowing how to play them. And so, the fun thing that we sit there and we talk about ball and we talk about, plays and defenses and stuff like that, sit there and watch kids just grow and just learning the game and learning their opponent and not just learning their opponent from a unit, but learning their opponent from individuals and what they bring to the table. And so, and then go apply that to your game. And so we're starting to see, a lot of fruits of their labor and just experience. A guy like Lane Alexander, who is, honestly, he's a tremendous football player for us. One of our big time leaders defensively, brings a lot of energy to practice every day. He loves ball. And, to go out there and make a play like that, right off the bat. And I think the biggest deal is from a defensive standpoint, if you're going to sit there and go score on us, we want you to have to earn this. And so if you're disciplined enough and sharp enough to sit there and go on a 12, 13, 14 play drive and there not be a penalty, there not be a drop ball, there not be a big play that we make defensively, then hats off to you that series. I don't know that you can do it every series. And so I think that kind of the mindset was, let's don't let them take the top off. Let's keep everything in front of us. And sometimes when a team wants to sit there and try to take the top off of you, put you in a position, if you got everything, if you can watch the quarterback throw and still have the receivers in front of you, that's a good thing to have.
They hit you with a one long run.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to happen.
On fourth down.
They're good too. On a 4th and 1, I think it was, near midfield. And that tied the game up at 7. Is this a team? Every team has a different identity and a personality. But I'm curious, because of all of how many players have had to move around and whatever, and you guys are 6 and 1. Is this a team that just loves football? Because sometimes that's not always the case across the board, maybe. But is this team just football junkies?
I think we got some football junkies. I think we got a team full of guys that just love each other and they love being around each other. I sat there and made the move from the Metroplex out here, and we had a bunch of stuff in storage. I went and cleaned out the storage over the summer and put a pool table in the locker room. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have any room for it, nor Jody and I, very good pool players. And so we put the pool table in there. And I mean, these guys got tournaments going on all the time. And I don't know how many sticks they've broken and stuff, but they enjoy hanging out with each other. And that's what you want. You want them to sit there and hang out in the locker room. I got to go home at night sometimes and go in the locker room and beg them to go home. And so I think they just love being around each other. They love the game of football. They love pouring into what they poured into. You sit there and you go through all season, and we got beat round 1 last year. And the following week, we took up equipment on Monday and we started work on Tuesday. And we went to work. There's no time. I mean, if you don't want to do this, then win more games. And so we went to work, and I mean, it wasn't fun, and it was tough. And these guys that have been through all that have survived all that. And so I think it's, you sit there, you carry that into the spring. We didn't do spring ball, but we did our version of spring ball. And then you carry that into summer strength and conditioning. And then you go into fall camp and do all. These guys have sat there and they've survived it all. And now they kind of get to the point to where it's payday. and they get to do it together, and they look around and they see the guys lockering next to them. They see the guys working with them, and they say, all right, we're the ones that made it, and kind of got a Junction Boys theme to it.
No, that you do. And we'll talk Colleen, the Kangaroos next week. We'll do this again next week. That reminds me, Robert E. Lee High School in Tyler was getting better, but they couldn't get past the second round. They also had to learn how to beat Marshall and Longview and Lufkin and John Tyler.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy.
Gauntlet.
But they would start to pick one of those off or two, and they'd get to the playoffs, but they lose in the second round. But they also were losing to teams that eventually, like North Mesquite,
who might go win it all.
that would win it all.
Yeah.
And 1 year was second round. They beat Plano, or they lost to Plano after they'd beaten them. But I don't know when they started this, but they had an offensive line coach, Gary Fleet. They started mat drills.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing about these legendary mat drills. And I'm not saying they didn't invent the wheel, but I was told that it was so intense. And they had big gray trash cans at each corner.
Sure.
Because they were physically to the limit. And that was one of the most that every school kind of has their own thing. But I remember, and then they went on this run of semifinals, quarterfinals, state championship, and won it. And
Sure.
I'm not saying that's why, but it's that they liked being with each other. They loved each other.
Absolutely.
They were in it for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you create all that. I don't know that we as adults even understand when we're going through those hard times, what it's creating down the road. I mean, we live in a fast-paced society, microwave society.
Mm-hmm.
We want everything to happen right now. And if it doesn't, then I'm ready to move on to the next thing. And so, I think this right now, for what these young men are going through, what they've been through, what they're getting to experience, what we're still having to go through right now, these are lifelong lessons. And so you and I both know this, and we have to be reminded of it from time to time. Anything worth having in life, you had to work extremely hard for, and you had to sit there and go through some difficult times. And even sometimes I didn't even know what the answers were to them or the whys to them. And, but they were difficult. And now we get to this point, you start to see some of the fruits of the labor. To a degree, but we also want to associate that with the game of life. I mean, being in this profession hasn't always been fun.
Yeah.
And but I got a family that depends on me. They depend for me to put a roof over their head, food in their bellies, send the kids to school, clothes on their back, all of that stuff, and to be able to pay the bills. Being marriage. Yep. Marriage is a tough thing. And I think she's always loved me, but I don't know that she's always liked me. And so, but we've made it 33 years. And I think, I attribute it a lot to the way that we were brought up, with great parents and our faith and all that stuff, but I also attribute it to what I got to go through at Stephenville as a player, not as a coach, but as a player. And, what they put us through. And we had a lot of players there that went off to boot camps and played, and they joined the Marines and stuff like that. And they came back and said, man, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Everyone's going to go through some sort of disappointment, fired, rejection, or whatever. And you can feed off of that if you do it the right way, and it makes you better.
No doubt.
In the end. Good to see you, man. Enjoy
Great
the rest of the off week.
We will.
Next week, we'll be back on. It's Killeen High School at Killeen Kangaroos at Leo Buckley a week from Friday. And we'll get into that game and also the broadcast and more. Garrett Ross, thank you very much. Our sponsors, thanks to Burt Colton Ford and Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue, and El Conquistador, Mexican restaurant that supplies food for the coaching staff when I go to see them on Tuesdays, and Peter's Chevrolet. This is the Midway Weekly Podcast.